Welcome to Sumbits, where we decode the PowerSchool development experience. Sumbits is brought to you by MBA. Let's start the show.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Sumbits. Apologize for the little delay. We weren't quite on our one per month, but we're not forgetting about you. We're back in the mix.
The last two really close together.
That's true. Joined always here with Eric and Ryan, as you guys know. If you're looking at the screen right now, see a couple new guests. We have Cole Wolgamuth and Stephen Reel joining us today. They are both a couple developers that have joined MBA in the last couple years. Super grateful to have them on our teams. But I wanted to give them an opportunity to kind of introduce themselves. We'll start with Stephen. Stephen.
Hi, I've been with MBA about 2 years now. I'm a senior developer with the plugin team. I've been working with PowerSchool since about 2009 with the school district.
So you did work for a school.
Yep.
What about you, Cole?
Yeah, I'm Cole. I'm on the customizations developer team. I've been working for MBA since 2024, so 2 years. I started right after Stephen, I believe. And then before that, I was at a school district here in Missouri since doing PowerSchool stuff since 2021.
Perfect. Eric, see all this great experience working at schools.
It's humbling. It is most certainly humbling. And I just have to give a quick shout out before we start today to another developer that's part of the MBA team. We haven't had him on Sumbits yet, maybe one of these days. But my good buddy Owen, some of you that have been to the Wisconsin Academy have met Owen. Amazing kid. He is just coming up in a couple days on his 1 year anniversary with MBA. So Owen, if you're listening, shout out to you, my brother.
Yeah, I think eventually we'll need to get all of our devs on an episode or two, for sure. Anyway, so like typically we have like a single topic that we talk about on Sumbits. Today we're going to do something a little different. Everybody hold up. Everybody's got a little whiteboard or a notepad. We're going to do kind of a little trivia, more of a question and answer type feel today. We're going to try something new. Let us know if you guys like this format or not. Maybe we'll do this another time. Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Does it show? Which way does it show?
Yeah, that's true. We're good.
Okay. Because it shows backwards for me, but I think that's fine.
Yeah. Mine is. Am I good?
Yeah.
I agree. It's backwards for me.
Are you trying to use a highlighter on a whiteboard?
Kind of looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it.
Just saying, it's not.
Maybe I just won't answer. I'll just make you guys answer. So we're gonna jump right into it. I have a long list of questions. I got to thank Ryan for coming up with some questions. So he's cheating a little bit. He knows the questions before they get asked, but he doesn't know the order. So,
but they're not really questions, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So we're gonna jump right in. First question for you guys, and whether try to keep it concise on your page, but we'll definitely have a little conversation about it after we see some answers. But what PowerSchool? This is all about customizations, right? That was the intent of Sumbits from the very beginning.
Most of them are.
Most of them, yeah. And I really, really like this question, Ryan. What PowerSchool screen would you redesign first if you had a chance? We need to put in like the Jeopardy music. That might be some trademark infringement, copyright infringement.
We said nothing.
I think if it's just a sample, we're good. Once you got your answers, stick them up there. We'll see who gets the copy off of other people.
All right, I'm going to apologize in advance for my answer for more than one reason. Oh,
interesting, Stephen.
I misspelled it, and it's
I was like, "Are you apologizing for the misspelling, or
both?" Yeah, and it's not a single screen.
Ryan, Cole,
I thought of one now. Yes, I wrote the question, but I didn't really ponder answers.
That's fine.
Okay.
DEM and DEM. Look at those guys. Look at those guys. Since we have two of the same answer, Ryan or Cole, tell me why.
My reason is purely performance. That functionally great, but getting that screen to load and waiting for it to load. That's the pain point there. I wish that could be quicker. And I mean, there's a couple other screens that are very similar in nature, but yeah, that's my main gripe there.
Okay, can I interject for a minute? Did we say DEM?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify for anybody who's not familiar, that's Data Export Manager.
I mean, technically, Ryan wrote it out.
Well, he did, but some people are listening and they're not
true.
seeing what he held up.
I said Data Export Manager.
Data Export Manager, DEM. I'm gonna agree with you on that one. It's not what I wrote, but I'll let you and Cole expound upon your frustrations there.
Yeah,
What were you,
yeah.
Cole?
Writing a bunch of Power Queries. The error handling on that page is less than helpful. There's responses that come back. That would be nice to show the front user instead of just an unhelpful pop-up box through all the fields. And
I will argue it's gotten better, but no, it's still not awesome.
Steven, you had transfer info.
Oh, before we go to transfer info, can I share my thoughts on DEM?
I mean, I guess.
As someone who's
Try
never
not
worked
to
in
sound
school.
so enthusiastic about it. I'm with you on that, and I gotta give props where props are due. There are some things I love about DEM, especially in managing plugins where we're creating extended tables. I love the fact that we're able to edit and mass edit records in extended tables. I guess I'm going to say this one with a grain of salt, but I wish there was a way to delete from DEM if you wanted to be able to say mass delete something. And it would also be really nice if there was a way to update CLOB fields in DEM.
But you can delete from DEM. Or sorry, it's DEIM technically, but yeah, like Data Import Manager can be used to delete records.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my thoughts.
So a few more steps than what it was in DDA, right?
Mm-hmm, yes. We were literally talking about this at a meeting before this, Cole and I.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I think what you're referring to, Ryan, is we'd go to DEM, filter on the records we want, export them, and import just the ID, and that allows you to delete via import. Yes.
Or as I was saying, because Data Export Manager and the filters, like literally again in the meeting before this, sometimes because of how unwieldy Data Export Manager is, if you can try to query, get your IDs, and put together a spreadsheet, you can be more precise and effective doing it that way. Because at the end of the day, all you need is that file with the IDs.
It's interesting. But yeah, brain was going. Any other thoughts on DEM? Now, Steven, what don't you like about transfer info?
Well, it has gotten better recently. I just remember that being one of those pages I needed to customize at my district. I would also say this isn't necessarily a page, but also I'm going to put it in here anyways. Having the current enrollment on the student record and then having a re-enrollments tables. I wish we didn't have that.
So you're getting into more data design than really a page, for sure.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's just the avatar of the data design.
I'm going 2 for 2 on this one on correcting the name of the page. We needed to explain DEM. Also, there is no such page as transfer info, Stephen Reel.
What is it called now?
What is it? Enrollment history?
Yeah.
I guarantee you the majority of the people watching this and listening to this know it and remember it as transfer info.
And how many of us still refer to the student backpack in the teacher portal?
I hear it quite a bit, for sure.
Yes. Sorry, just had to bust your chops on that one, Stephen.
All right, Eric, do we want to get into Power Scheduler?
Say again?
Not a page.
Not a page. It is. It's just, I feel like it's one of those things that hasn't been it's kind of like Power Lunch, where it hasn't maybe received all the TLC that it deserves. But it's a beast. So
yeah, how could it get any better?
Of all this, portals, the pieces of PowerSchool that I think would be most relevant to having actual school experience for, that might be one of them. It's just the irony that it's you bringing that one up.
Right.
Well, it's funny because I always dread when I go to say like a PSUG event that someone's going to ask me questions about scheduling, and I'll be like, I'm a customizer. I don't know how to schedule. That said, I have written plugins that revolve around scheduling, so I have had to get into Power Scheduler a bit to set up seed data, if you will. But I'm oftentimes calling people who have worked at a school district to help me make sure I've got that seed data set up appropriately.
I mean, I'm going to be the one that kind of defends Power Scheduler a little bit here because, you know, most of us have only ever been in PowerSchool, so we don't know what the alternative is in different SISs. And I would, from my experience, from what I've heard from other PowerSchools or other student information systems, Power Scheduler is one of the most powerful ones that is out there. So, you know, with power comes complexity, right? And I think that's where a lot of people get lost through Power Scheduler, but it can do a lot of fun things if you know what you're doing. All right, moving on to the next question. Again, kind of based around customizations, more on the plugin side. What is the most valuable custom PowerSchool plugin a district could have? Let's go with free plugin. This one's easy for me.
Me too.
I need to think about this. The most valuable free plugin.
Okay, from a customization development perspective, for sure. I can understand that, Ryan. Not where I was going. A lot of brain power going on right now.
All right. A little self-serving on that one.
Right? Just a little bit.
I couldn't decide. I had to put both of those.
Oh, look at Cole.
Yeah, SQL
points.
Studio for sure.
Steven's going to just give up and just go along with it.
Yeah, I was going to say SQL Studio, but then I can't think of the name of it right now. It's on the start page where you can enter student state IDs and
multi-select.
Yes.
That's where I was going. You know, as a district user, that was like the most powerful tool, especially dealing with any type of state reporting stuff where you're getting spreadsheets from other places and you want to make that your selection. Very difficult to do without a tool like multi-select. But given I'm in a room with a bunch of developers, it makes sense. Unfortunately, we got to give Madam Schmarson credit. But yeah, SQL Studio. Who wants to take that on?
I mean, earlier today, I always look for SQL Studio if I'm working with a client and troubleshooting an issue that they're having with a plugin. If it's data related, it's such a useful tool to be able to narrow down and laser focus in on a specific problem. And it helped me solve a bug that one of our clients was dealing with today. It is something very special.
I remember before SQL Studio was out there trying to, work outside of your district or try to, support other customers, make customizations. What a frustrating time that could be. Effectively, your best bet was just live updating your T-list file and then running. But of course, when that fails, it doesn't work. And there's no way you can just easily do a quick select all to see, what does my data look like? What's the problem here? Let's just narrow this down to one ID. Like it's much more, working without SQL Studio is like trying to develop Power Queries. It's aggravating. Yeah,
for sure.
You brought something up there too that's really nice, I think, about SQL Studio is the immediate feedback that you can get when there's a syntax error in your SQL. Back to your point of before, otherwise you've got T-list embedded somewhere and you're modifying it on the fly and you get no results and you're wondering if it was because you filtered out any potential results or if you have a syntax error and you're looking at system logs.
Or if it's just your row template.
Yeah, right.
Maybe your SQL's completely fine.
I enjoy that Cole wrote down both SQL Studio and customization reference.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I have my own reasoning why those two are really great. But I want to hear your reasoning first.
yeah. I had to write them both down because right now, definitely SQL Studio is more of the needed tool when I'm working with clients and working on their servers. That way, I can run those queries. But customization reference before I joined MBA and was just doing school district work. I had my own self-hosted server. I could run queries through SQL Developer. But your customization reference helped a bunch, tying in all those things that aren't well documented in PowerSchool's knowledge base. Helps to have them all right there. So that's why I chose the customization reference, because I wouldn't have been able to make sense of a lot of PowerSchool without that at the school district.
So I'm going to begrudgingly give Eric a bunch of credit here. So I apologize for everyone. But when I was working at a district and I made that mental switch of like wanting to learn SQL, those two tools together, the customization reference and SQL Studio, was massively helpful for me to be able to go through the customization reference. And also, to give Eric more credit, when Eric teaches classes around SQL in basically any of his classes, he typically uses the customization reference as his teaching tool. So as somebody that actually took some of Eric's classes years and years and years ago, to be able to take that home and basically follow along with the teaching material, and then having a tool like SQL Studio to like do my own thing and still have the reference material there, was it was pretty helpful, Eric.
I mean, I use your plugin, the customization reference in instruction as well, because you know, no use to reinvent the wheel. It's really good. So,
Well, thank you. Yeah, I built that twofold to use as presentation material when I taught, and early on, because I found myself constantly digging through files and files and files of old code to find an example of how I know I did this before. So I built it for my own reference, because I think, like many developers, if you take Google away from me and expect me to have everything just jammed in my head, I am not going to have a productive day.
I'm going to go down the SQL rabbit hole a little bit. A couple more SQL questions. Should PowerSchool admins at a district, should PowerSchool admins have basic SQL knowledge? I feel like we're all going to be on the same page there.
Someone must acknowledge that.
That's fair.
I think they either need to have it or they need to have someone to lean on.
That's fair. No, I would say that's very dependent on district size, right? I mean, the district that I supported was about 1,500-1,600 kids. Our entire IT department was 3 people. I was the only PowerSchool admin, so definitely didn't have somebody else to lean on to know SQL. But I could definitely see the larger districts having somebody in a PowerSchool admin, because that concept of PowerSchool admin can range.
Yes,
huge, right?
There's a lot of hats to wear, and the smaller your district, the more of them that one person has on.
For sure.
Yeah, you don't even need to have an advanced SQL knowledge. I'd say it's just, if you can query a table, that means you can look at the raw data and get a better idea of what's going on. And there are other features in PowerSchool that let you see that data, but none as easy and convenient and readily available as just being able to select all from a table.
I mean, that's fair.
Or beyond that, how many times do you have to export and VLOOKUP? I mean, you can get the same information probably with a lot of exports, but I mean, the fact that you can write a query and have it splash right in front of your face.
Eric, I'll never forget, it was probably, 5 years ago when I was in a conversation with you and we were talking about VLOOKUP in Excel. And I was amazed that you did not know how to do VLOOKUP in Excel. And you simply looked at me and was like, why would I ever need it? I know SQL.
Yeah. I've said that to more than one person.
I'm sure.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I was at a district, even before I got into customizations, I learned SQL after, getting into customizations, but I wish I would have went down the path of SQL first, because the amount of help that knowing SQL and being able to run queries for data troubleshooting was massive, because a lot of times, like, there's not a core built-in report to get out the data that you need. Sometimes DDE wasn't enough because that's only out of a single table. But yeah, I mean, being able to, like Ryan said, even some simple queries is massively helpful. So furthermore, what area of PowerSchool would you be happy if you never had to write SQL for it ever again?
Oh, we're all going to have the same answer for this one.
Yep. So we're all laughing. For anybody that has never tried to query incidents before, who wants to talk about what that looks like?
Stephen is. I can't speak for Cole and Ryan, but Stephen has lived, I think, at least 50% of his last 2 years with MBA deep into incident management.
Yeah, it's if you wanted to get, for example, my incidents with offenders, you're joining to the incidents and the participants and the roles and there's half a dozen tables you have to go through. And sometimes you have to go loops through the tables to get to the right. It's powerful. You can put a lot of stuff in it, but it's difficult.
And let's not forget, it all also depends on how that district uses incident management, because while, yes, that's true what you're saying, there's also so many variables at play with how they've configured it and how they use various labels or attributes or keys that cause even more complexity when you're trying to, work through that data and join tables and get a meaningful data set on the outside.
Am I remembering this right? LU codes? LU subcode?
Yep. And there's, I think it's behaviors. You can have 4 or 5 subcodes. So if you need to get all of those, now you're like looping through those tables. And
you're joining the same table and having to, Adam Larson, I hope you're listening. You're joining the same table, so you're having to alias that table.
I mean,
Ryan, do you still have your hand-drawn schema, ERD?
Honestly?
Oh my gosh, I remember you showing that to me. This guy actually hand wrote out an entity relationship diagram for incidents at one point.
I do. I actually always kept them. I mean, this I haven't used those in years, but when I worked in a school district, because I actually worked in a school district, we're going to ring this bell a lot today, it seems. This was before SQL Studio. This was before customization reference. This was before a lot of the things that we, now have at our fingertips. We had the data dictionary, but it was a PDF document. It worked, but I sat there with, letter size US letter paper and a pen and would write my own ERDs so that I could get a better idea of how the attendance tables work together and how the student enrollments. And again, going back then before Power Teacher Gradebook, how the PSM tables all worked with the old gradebook, because those were their own unique beast and disaster. They're a little more intuitive than incident management, but they had their own nuance that you had to kind of navigate.
Nicole, quick trivia: how many tables are involved in incidents? Just guess. I'm going
to guess 11.
I don't know for sure. My guess is closer to 15 to 20.
Really? See, I was gonna go with like 7, because they just reuse the same table for things over and over again.
I don't know the answer to that.
Wow.
There you go. Somebody tell us how many specific tables there are. Or Ryan, are you looking it up right now?
Kinda. We'll see.
Well, now, do we have to account for the fact that they joined to the students' table and or the school staff or users' table?
I guess I did question it like involved, right?
I think we can leave those out.
I mean, you know what? There's some in there that I don't think I ever even look at. But so all tables that start with the string incident, there's 20 of them. But I think if I'm working with queries myself, the only ones I'm worried about are incident action, incident action attribute, incident detail, lookup code and lookup subcode, object person, other person action, person detail, person role.
I'm hoping everybody's actually
personal,
watching this because the facial expressions that Ryan is going through right now, trying to figure that out is pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I pulled up participant template.
I pulled up my little ERD for it, and I've got 11 tables that I typically go to. That doesn't include any of the templates, though.
Which I think are newer.
So I'm going to move on, and because I'm genuinely curious, this is not something that I've dealt with very much at all. Tables or views? Do you have a preference? And I would like somebody to volunteer to kind of explain the difference. I got 3 answers, Ryan. I'm waiting on yours. Very blurry. All right. Who wants to take on explaining the difference relatively briefly?
Well, a view is a representation of a data set, usually backboned by a query that's been written. So, in a database, a table, of course, itself holds all the records. And if you're going to select from the table, you select directly from the table. But if you ever write a query because you want to get all of the data in one table, let's say relative to data in another table, that's oversimplifying, but still, but you want to now readily be able to access that data at any point, you would use that query to make a view, and then you can select from that view whenever you want, rather than having to write that underlying query again.
So what would be a view that most people would be familiar with?
Teachers.
Explain.
So once upon a time, teachers could not change schools when they were logged into PowerTeacher. If you worked in a district where, a teacher had to go from one school to the next, which was fairly common, those teachers all had to have distinct logins for each building. And usually what that meant was, R Cockram, Stony Mountain, R Cockram, TCI, just the school abbreviation, which was, a bit of a nightmare and a mess. And trying to figure out when someone says, my account's locked and I need my password reset. Well, which one? Well, which one am I trying to log into, So they introduced the school staff and the users table as a way to now centralize the user record and provide access to the different buildings. So now, rather than one table for all PowerSchool admin users, now you have the users table, which holds the user record, and then school staff, which associates the individual buildings. When they did that, in order to not break all existing customizations that relied on the pre-existing teachers table, they just converted the teachers table into a view containing all that same data, and therefore still accessible, but not breaking anything.
Cole, is that something you ever had to deal with, or did you come into the game late enough?
I came into the game late enough to not have to deal with it, at least making the multiple accounts. Just querying the teacher's table. Sometimes it's still helpful to use the view. Like in that case, if the view isn't too convoluted, then it's helpful. If it starts getting bunches and bunches of joins that you don't really need all that data, you can usually go back to the tables, not have to worry about it. But yeah, I never had to deal with multiple staff accounts.
So how high of a knowledge do you need to have of the database to have a good understanding of whether to use tables or views? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a preference thing and it's ease. So personally, I don't use the teachers one because at the end of the day, it's just users and school staff, and I like to use those just as they are. But when it comes to attendance, there's a lot of great views for attendance that are well worth exploring those rather than writing it out yourself. Because although, yeah, I know my way around attendance and attendance tables and queries for attendance, there is a lot of heavy lifting already done in those views that simplify the process.
So I'd be willing to guess
Especially
that
when it comes to ADA, ADM, that would be, there are so many factors that contribute to calculating ADA, ADM, from FTEs to attendance conversions, and the list goes on and on.
So what kind of views are we talking about? Because I'm wondering if any of our listeners or viewers have used some of these and not even realized that they were views versus tables.
Well, I think the most I guess well-known one for attendance would be PS underscore ADA ADM underscore default underscore all. Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
There's a bunch of them.
so yeah, that PS ADA ADM defaults all would be, I think, the most well-known and well-used attendance view, but that is not at all the only one. There are others.
All right, moving on. This is kind of a very broad question, but for the people that that did work in schools and were trying to learn PowerSchool, or Eric, from your perspective too, I guess we'll let you play. What concept can be the hardest to understand in PowerSchool? That's kind of a head in the clouds kind of question, but while they're all thinking, where my mind goes to is like it reminds me of some of the questions that I would get as a PowerSchool administrator. Okay. And that's along the same lines that I was going to go with is GPAs. When I remember when, whether it was teachers or administrators, and they would come to me as the PowerSchool administrator and go, hey, I need to know what my class's GPAs are. And then having to respond to that question of like, okay, what kind of GPA? And then having to sit there and define whether it's just for a quarter or for a semester or for a specific set of classes, and then like trying to explain how GPAs are actually calculated in PowerSchool became a very difficult concept to try to explain to somebody that literally just was asking a fairly simple question.
Along those lines, as a guy who's never worked in a school district, I don't know if you knew that about me. I got to wonder, and I know very little about, and I'd be completely lost if I was administrating PowerSchool, getting grade books set up, getting the teachers set up for, your courses and what standards are associated to what course if you're using standards-based grading, and just what assignments factor into final grades, what grades can be excluded. It just seems I've always been very fortunate to sit down with an Apple Grove data set where people that know more than me have put the framework together for me to work within, and I just pull the data out after it's already been configured. That seems to me like it'd be a beast.
And that like everything you kind of said there is very much the reason why the years and terms. So my answer was years and terms versus final grades and store codes, because you can have a term called S1 and a final grade called S1, and not always are they the same, but when especially looking at the database too, when you're looking at the tables, and you're looking at dates, and then you're looking at grades and grade books, and teachers are having problems trying to figure out what's going on. I'm in S1. Are you in S1 the term, or are you in S1 the final grade?
Right.
But it says it's in S1. I know that, but there's S1 up here and there's S1 down here. So getting to understand the relationship between those tables, because they are related to each other, but the fact that one's like they're both containers and categories, but at the same time only one's truly the container for the grades and a lot of the stuff in the grade book, while the other is like the category. But even then, that's still,
well, you throw final grade and reporting terms in there as well.
Yeah,
just adds to the confusion.
Well, and then here's a fun one for me. I had someone yell at me once that my code was broken because I was working with them, helping them with Report Creator. And I know this, it's only kind of along that same line, but talking about store codes. they had a store code show up in a drop down as a selection option for them in Report Creator. And they said, we don't use that. We've never used that. I said, that didn't come from thin air. It's in your database. And it was something silly like Z5, you know. I go into DDE, search your stored grades table where store code equals Z5. Well, how about that? How'd that get in there?
How'd that get there?
That might be a little bit of a digression from, reporting terms versus years in terms, but yeah.
For those who don't know and have ever, been wondered though, terms are in the terms table. Final grades are in the term bins table.
Makes perfect sense. That's perfect logic. What about you, Cole?
I didn't hold it up yet. Working and setting up attendance is always tedious, and understanding when you go look at all the pages how every district can set it up differently, even within one state.
I was going to be mean and say how many different ways can you set up attendance, but that's a mean question.
I don't even know. But yeah, it's just attendance setup.
So generally, I mean, attendance is typically driven by state reporting and how the state wants you to set it up. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I will say for Indiana, there was still a fair amount of flexibility as far as how a district wanted to set up their attendance, which I thought was always really interesting. But yeah, between all of the different conversion types, attendance is definitely a beast.
I'd say it's almost a benefit to have it driven by state reporting, because when it's not, then, as we know, I mean, one of my questions there, I mean, this, we can just go, one data set, what data set does every district potentially do differently? And my answer would have been attendance for that one. And if at least the state's saying it's got to be one way, then at least everyone in that state's the same way, because otherwise every district will do it differently.
Absolutely. Not to mention just getting into codes, and you can make all the different kinds of attendance codes and whatnot. So does that make attendance the hardest thing to customize around?
Ooh, I've often joked with my bosses that one of the plugins that MBA has built that I haven't had to tinker with as of yet is the attendance monitor. And I think it's been pretty popular, and I think a lot of our users are loving it. And I've told the bosses, if you ever assign that plugin to me, you're going to get my resignation. I just, wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's probably right up there with incidents, and maybe even in some ways beyond it, especially from a performance perspective, with so many different possible configurations. And PowerSchool tried to keep attendance simple with what's the term I'm looking for? Negative attendance, or where the absence of an attendance record means you're present.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of folks that changed round about COVID time. But the sheer volume of records that you're working with from an attendance perspective.
Yeah, the idea of the attendance conversion is really nice on paper, because it doesn't matter how it's calculated. There's just a conversion to make it consistent. But anybody that's worked in PowerSchool knows that just adds another layer to try to troubleshoot. Yeah. So I can imagine the idea of making a plugin available to so many districts from Eric and Steven's perspective versus Ryan and Cole's perspective. Attendance is a very different beast. Ryan and Cole, I assume you've both done one-off customizations for districts around attendance. And I would assume that experience is very different than trying to figure it out for all different types.
I mean, probably, considering I enjoy writing attendance queries, but that's because I never have to account for a million possibilities. I'm usually working very, very deliberately and very specifically for that client or district. But there is very little previous work that I can reuse in a lot of those cases because of that same reason. Like, outside of selecting from the attendance table, I mean, and that's an over exaggeration, but nonetheless, because of those dynamics, because of those distinct setups in every district, one attendance query for one district does not work exactly what you would expect in the next.
Attendance is really interesting to me because the flexibility that PowerSchool gives districts to be able to set up the attendance is so vast. I guess specifically to Ryan and Cole, has there ever been kind of a request from an attendance perspective that PowerSchool just is not able to accommodate? Because I don't think I've ran into a particular type of setup that PowerSchool like has not accounted for. Nothing comes to mind.
I mean,
I'm curious.
The reason they come to us is in general is like there's no existing report that I will say it's usually to do with.
But that's reporting based on a setup that they've already done and are happy with. They're just wanting a different type of reporting for it. Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, their attendance will work. They just can't get a nice report for it. And that's the most we'll see. And I mean, that's always just a matter of some creative SQL and JavaScript.
So this question is kind of along the same lines. But what PowerSchool feature feels simple until you have to explain it to someone else? Like that's along the same lines, but maybe a little different. Oh, good call. I like that everybody else is thinking with their head down to the paper so they don't see your response and just steal it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Eric,
I'm drawing a blank right now.
Did we break your brain today?
Yeah. My hamster's running. Oh.
GPA? Already talked about GPA, but gradebook calculation? You're muted, by the way, Steve.
Yeah. With gradebook calculations, we always had the problem of teachers would set up like weighted categories and it wouldn't ever calculate the grade they were expecting it would. And so there was always the conversation we had to have of, well, what if we change it to, total points? It's a little easier for people to look at it and see where the grade came from.
Right.
Oh, Ryan? I got one.
Oh, I mean, the concept of contacts is pretty simple, right?
Right. But managing it can be a little bit of a bear.
Yep. Cole, what did you have?
I had the health module.
Health module.
Yeah. Just getting it set up with all the different health code sets that are different from regular PowerSchool code sets. It can be tricky for users, and then querying the data. There's a lot of different tables in there, where some of them are like the incidence table where they loop back in on themselves, but others aren't.
State reporting is typically pretty involved in the health piece as well.
Yeah, and there was you could customize it almost in the same way as contacts, but it wasn't very well documented. So there's some things that work really well in there and others that are a pain.
Ryan, I'm going to have to agree with yours.
Yeah. It's, again, this is definitely one you only really get a feel for if you'd worked in a district as a PS admin. But generally you build processes, you build guidelines as to, after your first few experiences with it as, okay, I'm not going to store every time you call, because then, you don't get anything else done. So in my old district, it got to a point where it's like, I will store only when the principal calls and only, once an hour. And if it doesn't work, go through and find what's wrong and, making reports. Then once you think you've got everything right, then we'll store again. But otherwise, storing grades, just the process too of correctly selecting the right thing, entering the right values, entering date ranges, picking sections. There's a lot of granular criteria when you're setting that up and running that process. That's easy to misconfigure and get everything wrong, and then rectifying it is even more of a hassle. So,
well, you're also setting up that permanently stored grades screen based on what you assume are the district and school rules, right? Specifically around like how long does a student have to be in a class before we actually store a grade for them, or how early do they have to leave for them to not count as a stored grade, all that fun stuff. Did we lose Eric? He got targeted and had to run away.
All right. No, I'm still with you.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're wrapping up here towards the end. I want to get back into customizations a little bit, maybe one or two more questions. When creating custom fields, UI or use a plugin, and how do you figure out your naming convention? Second piece is probably more of a discussion point.
Part of that, because it was also a bit about using the use to def X stuff or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm curious. Plugin on test server abbreviation. Now, yes.
I mean, that's fair, Steven.
So
plugin.
So here's my thing with the plugin, though. When I'm designing something, it's a lot harder to undo if you did it via plugin installation. So if I'm developing something fresh, and Steven, I think this is where you were going with this. Can you read what you wrote down?
I said UI at first. And then obviously
Yes.
with plugins, we have to ship it as a plugin. But being able to decide, oh, I don't like that field the way it is, I can easily go in the UI, remove it. Then when I'm all done, I'll go put it in the plugin file.
So if you're putting yourself in the shoes of our listener, who is probably an admin at a district, they're only dealing with one instance.
Yeah.
Would you start with UI and stay with UI? Or once you get it all figured out, would you still revert and go do everything through a plugin?
If you only have one server, one instance, then yeah. But if you have a test server, then that's what a test server is for.
Yeah, I agree. Just it feels so tedious to go in and create all the fields where I could just, copy paste on the plugin XML or the user schema root thing, and then just drop the table from Oracle. And then if I make a mistake, and try again.
Right. And you have the benefit that you're always working. Well, I mean, not when you're on a client server, but if you're developing on an MBA server, you have direct, unbridled power via SQL to drop a table, do some crazy stuff, which I haven't done in a long time, but can be a little tricky. Just dropping a table that you've created, especially if it's extended another
Not
table.
recommended by PowerSchool.
Yes.
At all.
Correct.
Or anyone. Or us.
I will say that there is some control that you can have over creating a table via a plugin, via XML. One huge thing, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I'm 95% sure indexing. So if you want to be able to index a column for faster lookup, you can do that via the XML, but you can't do it via the user interface. That said, I'll say two more things and then I'll shut up and let somebody else talk. The database extensions could have been on the list of the most frustrating user interfaces.
I was going to say that was the second only to the Data Expert Manager. It would honestly be a toss-up for me on those two.
Yeah. And I think it's confusing. It was kind of good what they did with that, where you have to create an extension group and then a table. But I think that's really confusing for most users. They just want to create, say, a custom field on a student's table. And then in terms of naming conventions, I'm just going to say unique. I've made the mistake back in my early days of creating extended tables of actually using once upon a time udefxed something because I didn't know any better.
So I'm gonna double back on the user interface. When database extensions first became a thing, yes, the group versus table was confusing, but going through and creating all of my own database extensions helped me understand the table structure better. And the naming scheme and how to reference custom fields and database extension fields, doing all of that by hand was definitely more beneficial to me than it would have been just trying to build it within a plugin or whatever. So I know not all of our listeners are at the same place. So if you're still struggling with database extensions, maybe use the UI. Hope you learn it a little better. All right, guys, we're going to end with one last question. Ryan, did you have anyone that you were like really hoping to answer that I haven't gotten to yet?
I can't remember them now.
All right. Well, it's not a Friday, but we're going to ask a Friday question.
Oh, okay. Now I know.
What PowerSchool task should never be done on a Friday afternoon? I mean, that's a big one. Yeah.
Because if you do it on a Friday afternoon, you're working all weekend too.
I was going to hold up PowerSchool updates, but now that I think about it, I did always do those on a Friday or a weekend, so I would have all weekend to get the server back up.
That's fair. If you want to work the weekend, there you go. These are some things to do. If you don't want to, what was yours, Stephen?
Application upgrades for the same reason, but at the same time, I did it, over the weekend.
Okay, now,
Eric, have you ever updated a PowerSchool server?
yeah, it's been over a decade since I've had to dig that deep. But isn't okay? So, devil's advocate on you there, Stephen and Cole. If you do it on a Thursday evening, all of your stakeholders need that back up by Friday morning, right?
Unless you can do it over the summer.
Yeah,
I usually did mine at 6 a.m.
There you go.
And then occasionally it wasn't up by 7, and then your phone would ring. But generally speaking, it was good.
Yeah. I found that question funny, Ryan, because I kind of assumed that these were going to be all the same answers and also the same responses of, well, that's when I did do it, but it just made me work the entire weekend. Yeah, Ryan, yours was end of year.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've ever done a rollover on a Friday. That was typically a Monday morning, shut off everybody's access, and I'm going to get started on the process.
This is the week I'm doing it.
Exactly. And nobody else is getting in and touching anything. All right, guys. Any other thoughts before we head out? All right. Thank you, Cole. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate you, Eric and Ryan. As always, thanks for everybody for listening, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Enjoy more episodes and learn more at mba-link.com.